I should have been happy that night. It was the kind of event you plan your whole week around. A rooftop party in downtown Chicago to celebrate the latest round of promotions at Rachel's firm. She had been working toward this for months, maybe even longer. Long hours. Weekend travel. Late-night calls I could hear through the bedroom door even when she thought I was asleep. It all led to this one night. I wanted to be proud. I tried to be, and for the first hour or so I managed. The room was gorgeous, all glass walls and polished concrete floors. The skyline behind her shimmered with city lights like it was cheering her on. Rachel floated through the crowd like she was made for it, hugging coworkers, laughing with department heads, taking selfies with women in blazers and heels who I'd only heard about in passing. She wore this silver backless dress I'd never seen before, and for a second, I caught myself staring at her the way I used to when we first met. She was magnetic. Everyone noticed her. She was the kind of person you instinctively moved toward. But even in that moment, something felt off. I just couldn't name it yet. Then I saw him. He was standing a little too close to her near the edge of the room. Tall, dark blazer, sharp features. She had her hand resting on his shoulder in that soft, lazy kind of way that said she was comfortable, too comfortable. He smiled like he had a secret. The way they looked at each other. I can't explain it exactly, but I knew. It was the kind of look people share when they're not just colleagues. It wasn't flirtation. Flirting is light and deniable. This was something else. It had history. I stared for a second too long, frozen by that kind of disbelief you get when reality doesn't quite match what you've convinced yourself is true. Then I started walking toward them. Rachel saw me approaching and did this little jolt. Barely perceptible, but it was there. She straightened her back and smiled in that performative way she did when she was caught off guard. "Oh, hey," she said quickly, as if her voice could erase the look I'd just seen. "Jake, come meet Colin, he's on the New York team. Just flew in today for the event." Colin. His handshake was limp, too casual. He gave me that glance-over kind of look that men give when they're assessing whether you're a threat or just someone to ignore. I didn't smile. I didn't have it in me. "Congrats on the promotion," I said to Rachel, not taking my eyes off her. "Thanks, babe," she replied, almost too quickly. She reached for her drink but didn't look at me when she said it. Instead, she turned to Colin again. "Jake's a great cook, by the way," she added, like that somehow justified the fact that I existed in this conversation. The three of us stood there for maybe 20 more seconds before Rachel pivoted. "I'm going to grab another round," she said. "You good with whiskey, Colin?" He nodded, and I watched her walk away in those silver heels like nothing had happened. She didn't look back. That was the moment it hit me. Not like a crash, but like the first few drops of rain before a storm you know is going to ruin the weekend. It wasn't just that she touched him, or that he looked at her like he'd done it before. It was the way she brushed it off like I hadn't seen a thing. Like I wasn't even worth lying to properly. To everyone else, the night carried on. Clinking glasses, someone giving a speech near the dessert table, a group of analysts dancing awkwardly to a pop song that had no business playing at a corporate function. But for me, the air changed. Something cold settled in my chest. I felt like a spectator at my own life. I tried to shake it off. Told myself it was probably nothing. People touch each other at parties. Coworkers get close. Maybe she was just being friendly. Maybe I was reading into it too much. But deep down, I knew better. Later that night, we were walking back to the hotel she'd booked downtown. She said it was so she wouldn't have to Uber home in heels. But I remembered how last month she had said she preferred staying in the suburbs after work events because the city stressed her out. I didn't say anything about that. Not yet. We walked in silence most of the way, the air cool for late summer. She scrolled through her phone the whole time, her face lit up by the screen, responding to messages I wasn't invited to read. "Did you have fun?" she asked suddenly, not looking up. "Yeah." I lied. She smiled, but it was thin. "You seemed a little quiet." "I was just watching you," I said, and that made her pause. She turned to me, raising an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" "It means you were busy. I figured I'd let you enjoy it." "Jake," she said with a forced laugh. "Don't be weird. It was just a work party. I nodded, letting the silence stretch a few seconds too long. Then I said it. Who is Colin? She tensed ever so slightly. Like I said, he's on the New York team. We worked together on that fintech client back in March. Never heard you mention him. I don't tell you about every coworker I talk to, she said, her tone defensive now. No, I said. But you usually mention the ones who get promoted with you, especially the ones you touch like that. She stopped walking. We stood under the glow of a street lamp, a light breeze shifting her hair. For a moment, I thought maybe she'd admit something, even just a sliver of honesty. But she didn't. Don't start this, she said quietly. Not tonight. And just like that, she kept walking. I followed, slower this time. My footsteps felt heavier with every block. I wasn't sure what hurt more, the suspicion, or the way she dismissed it like I was some insecure teenager who couldn't handle his wife having male coworkers. When we got to the hotel, she went straight into the bathroom. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the city lights outside. There was a bottle of champagne chilling in a silver bucket on the table, probably courtesy of her company. I didn't touch it. I listened to the sound of water running. She was humming in the shower, like everything was fine. My mind drifted back to that moment at the party. The way her hand rested on his shoulder, how she leaned in, how he smiled with his eyes more than his mouth. That wasn't the first time they'd been close like that. You don't look at someone like that if it's the first time. That's the look of familiarity, of comfort, of something else. She came out of the bathroom in a robe, drying her hair with a towel. You're not drinking the champagne? She asked. Not really in the mood, I replied. She frowned. Jake, seriously, can you not ruin this night? I didn't answer. She crawled into bed and turned off the light. Within minutes, I could hear her breathing slow, her body relaxed. I stayed awake most of the night, staring at the ceiling. I didn't sleep that night. Rachel fell asleep like nothing had happened. Her breathing evened out, soft and steady, while my eyes remained fixed on the dark ceiling of that overpriced hotel room. There was something suffocating about the silence. Not because it was quiet, but because of everything she wasn't saying. The kind of silence you only get when someone's already moved on in their heart but hasn't told you yet. At 3:17 a.m., I got up, walked barefoot to the window, and pulled the curtains open. The city was still alive. Red brake lights blinked down below like a slow, tired heartbeat. I stood there, arms crossed, feeling like a ghost in my own life. For the first time in years, I thought about the last time Rachel and I had actually talked. Not surface talk, real talk. The kind where she'd grab my hand mid-sentence, eyes wide, excited about something as simple as a movie trailer or an idea she had for a trip we'd never end up taking. I couldn't even remember the last time she looked at me like that. Somewhere along the way, those little moments just evaporated. I didn't wake her in the morning. She got up late, rushed through a shower, and left a lipstick-stained coffee cup on the bathroom sink. I stayed behind as she Ubered to some brunch with coworkers. Probably with Colin too, if I had to guess. She didn't invite me, didn't even pretend to. I stared at my own reflection in the mirror after she left. I looked like a guy who had started to disappear. Not all at once, bit by bit. I'd become a background character in my own marriage. When I got home later that day, I started noticing everything. How she left her phone face down on the counter. How she stepped outside to take calls. How her calendar, which used to hang neatly on our kitchen corkboard, had been replaced by a digital one I wasn't invited to view anymore. And then there were the gifts. At first, I thought I was going crazy. A pair of earrings I'd never seen before. A handbag from a boutique I knew I hadn't bought. One night, she walked in wearing a necklace, something delicate and expensive looking. And when I asked about it, she said it was just something I've had forever. I didn't believe her, but I didn't push either. That was the worst part. I just nodded. I was scared of what would happen if I actually pressed for answers. Because deep down, I already knew the truth. I just wasn't ready to say it out loud. The days turned into weeks, and every detail became a piece of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. Her trips became more frequent. Seattle, New York, Miami. Always with a different excuse. Always with the same silence when she came back. She used to call me from airports, excited to talk before boarding. Now I was lucky to get a single text. "You know how crazy things are right now?" she'd say when I asked about it. "It's not personal." But it was personal. It was all personal. We had once shared everything. Inside jokes, lazy Sundays, grocery lists. Now, I barely knew what city she was waking up in half the time. I started to feel like the walls of our house were holding more secrets than memories. Then came the tablet. It was old, probably from college. I only found it because I was doing laundry and saw a zipper on her duffel bag slightly open. Inside was a pile of clothes and, tucked beneath them, the tablet. I don't know why I even powered it on. Curiosity. Or maybe instinct. The screen flickered to life. Still logged in. What I found wasn't vague. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was confirmation. There was a folder, hidden under a generic name like Project Notes. But once I tapped it open, there were photos. Dozens. Some were dated from months ago. Others were more recent. Rachel in New York, laughing on a rooftop. Rachel in Miami, clinking champagne glasses in a candlelit restaurant. Rachel in a bathrobe, curled up next to him in bed. Both of them smiling at the camera like it was their honeymoon. It was the same man in every picture. Colin. Every video, every photo, every digital memory felt like a direct blow. Not because of what they were doing, but because of how happy she looked. The kind of happiness I hadn't seen in her in years. The kind she never shared with me anymore. There was one video, recorded at 2:04 a.m. According to the timestamp, they were toasting with champagne in a hotel suite. Both in robes. She leaned into him, whispered something I couldn't hear, and kissed his cheek. The way he smiled told me this wasn't new. This was routine. I turned off the tablet and just sat there, holding it in my lap like it was radioactive. My heart wasn't racing. It wasn't even breaking. It was just still, like I had finally caught up with something I had already known for months. When Rachel came home that night, she acted like nothing had changed. She kicked off her shoes, poured herself a glass of wine, and asked what I wanted for dinner like we hadn't just crossed a line we could never return from. She didn't even notice the silence anymore. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. That was when I realized it wasn't the cheating that broke me. It was the indifference, the total absence of guilt, like I had already been written out of her story. As if she was just going through the motions, performing her role as wife, while her real life played out in another city, with another man in another world where I didn't exist. I started pulling away quietly, not in anger, not even in sadness, just in silence. I stopped asking where she was going, stopped texting when she was gone. I created a new bank account under my name, transferred small amounts at first. Nothing noticeable, then more. I started canceling subscriptions tied to my credit cards, began scanning documents, storing copies on a drive she didn't know existed. Little things. Preparations. Not revenge. Just survival. She never noticed. She was too busy working late. Too busy being seen with someone who made her feel alive. One evening, she got a formal-looking envelope in the mail, addressed to her. I opened it without thinking. It looked like junk mail at first. Inside was a glossy invitation to a corporate dinner in Boston. Her name was listed as a guest speaker. And next to her, Colin's name. He wasn't just her affair. He was her business partner now. Her future. She hadn't just replaced me emotionally. She had started replacing me professionally. I wasn't just being erased from her heart. I was being erased from her entire life. I sat down at the kitchen table, holding that invitation in my hands for a long time. No more guessing. No more wondering if I was imagining things. The proof wasn't hiding anymore. She didn't love me. Maybe she hadn't for a long time. And now I didn't love her either. I felt numb. Not the kind of numb that comes with pain, but the kind that settles in after the pain has finally run its course. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't even going to confront her. I was going to disappear. And I was going to do it my way. After that night, I moved differently. Not all at once. I didn't want her to notice. I wanted to slip through the cracks, like water through fingers. Silent. Intentional. I was done asking questions I already knew the answers to. I was done waiting for an apology that was never coming. It wasn't about punishing her. It was about reclaiming whatever pieces of myself I had left. It started with the storage unit. Just a small space on the edge of town. Climate-controlled. Secure. I rented it under a different name using a P.O. box I'd opened months earlier. Back when the first wave of doubt hit, but I couldn't admit it to myself yet. It had seemed paranoid then. Now it felt like foresight. Each day I'd take a little more. A stack of books. An old photo album. My high school guitar. Jackets she never liked. Things that mattered to me even if she'd forgotten they did. I left just enough behind to look normal. One pair of shoes in the closet. One row of shirts. My laptop charger on the nightstand. But the rest, bit by bit, disappeared. I moved money out of our joint accounts, careful to keep it subtle. 100 here, 200 there. By the time I was finished, I had what I needed tucked away. Not a fortune, but enough to start again. And then came the evidence. I wasn't even sure why I wanted it at first. Maybe for closure. Maybe for leverage. Maybe just to remind myself I hadn't imagined any of it. I backed up everything from that tablet. Photos, videos, emails. I even found an old cloud backup she hadn't touched in years. One that still synced to a folder on her old laptop. That's where the real heartbreak was. Not in the images. Not even in the texts to Colin. But in what she wrote to her friends. She talked about me like I was a problem to be solved. He's so passive. It's like he doesn't want anything out of life. Sometimes I wonder if I stayed with him out of habit. Or guilt. He doesn't even notice I'm gone half the time. Honestly, I feel like I'm dragging around dead weight. Dead weight. I read that line 5 times. I had never felt rage like that before. Not because she cheated. Not because she lied. But because she rewrote me. She didn't just fall out of love. She tore me down in her head until she could justify it. Until I was no longer a person worth loyalty. But even then, I didn't confront her. What was the point? It wasn't secrecy anymore, it was indifference. She didn't care whether I knew. She didn't care if I was hurting. And that, more than anything, told me what I needed to know. We weren't in a marriage anymore. We were in a play where she'd stopped learning her lines. I started sleeping in the guest room, blaming back pain and tossing too much at night. She didn't question it. In fact, I think she was relieved. We were now roommates, coexisting through carefully timed departures and polite small talk in the kitchen. The moment everything crystallized came on a Wednesday morning. She left her phone on the counter while she was in the shower. I wasn't looking for anything. I'd stopped needing proof. But the screen lit up with a preview from a group chat. Not even from Colin. Just her friends. It said, "Don't forget to send that RSVP. If things go well with Colin, you'll be out of there by spring." Out of there. Out of me. So there it was, plain and simple. She was planning to leave. She'd been playing the long game, waiting for the right moment. Maybe after a bonus. Maybe after a promotion. Maybe when she could leave without inconvenience. I wasn't even part of the equation anymore. That should have broken me. Didn't. It gave me clarity. She wanted to leave quietly. That was her plan. So I decided to beat her to it. I picked the date. The Friday after she was scheduled to fly to Seattle. Another client meeting. I didn't ask who the client was. I didn't care. She left on a morning flight. Hugged me at the door like I was a brother she hadn't seen in a while. Said, "See you Sunday." I nodded. She never noticed my bag was already in the trunk. As soon as she left, I moved. First, I closed the joint accounts. Transferred what was legally mine. I left a note with the final balance and a spreadsheet. No spite, just math. Then I wiped the hard drive on her old tablet. Not out of pettiness. Just so she'd know I had seen it, and that I didn't need to say a word. I packed up the last of my things. Clothes, documents, tools. Left the keys on the kitchen table in a small envelope labeled simply, "Jake." I paused before locking the door behind me. Took one last look at the house we'd spent 7 years building. It didn't feel like home anymore. It hadn't for a while. The silence wasn't painful. It was clean. I drove to the storage unit first, picked up what I needed, and headed out of town. I had a plan. A rental in a different city, far enough away to start new, close enough not to feel like exile. A job offer I'd quietly accepted 2 weeks earlier. They knew I was starting over. No questions asked. The first night in the new place, I slept on a mattress on the floor, surrounded by boxes. It was cold. It was unfamiliar, but it was mine. She texted the next morning. "Hey, just landed. Hope everything's okay. Love you." I didn't reply. Later that evening, "You're being quiet. Is everything all right at home?" Still nothing. The next day, "Jake? Did something happen? Why aren't you answering?" Then a call. Then another. Voicemails. By Sunday, she came home to silence. An empty closet. Blank walls. No forwarding address. Her messages turned frantic. "Jake, where are you? I don't understand what's going on. Please, just talk to me. I'm sorry. If this is about Colin, I'll explain. It's not what you think." But I was gone. I watched the messages come in from a burner number I'd used to forward her calls. Just in case. I never picked up. I didn't need to. She wanted freedom. She had it. She wanted space. I gave her all of it. And me? I finally had clarity. I wasn't the man she remembered anymore. I wasn't the burden she carried or the shadow she'd stepped around in her pursuit of something shinier. I was someone new. Someone rebuilding. She'd made her choice. And I'd made mine. Not in anger. Not in bitterness. But in peace. The first week away was the hardest, though not in the way people expect. It wasn't heartbreak that haunted me. It was the adjustment to stillness. When you've lived for so long in someone else's gravity, silence doesn't feel peaceful at first. Feels like you're drifting in space. No one calling. No one to explain yourself to. Just air. Just time. Rachel messaged me 17 times in the first 2 days. Her tone shifted like a pendulum swinging between confusion, guilt, denial, and then, by day 3, panic. "Jake, where did you go? Are you okay? Why would you do this? This isn't fair." I read each one, never replying. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I just didn't owe her the performance anymore. Not the reassurance. Not the patience. Not the effort she had long stopped giving me. Her voicemails were longer. The first sounded confused. She tried to play it light, pretending she wasn't worried. Said something about the Wi-Fi being out, laughed, and asked me to pick up almond milk if I went out. The next was quieter. "I don't know what's going on. I'm not mad. I need to hear your voice." Then came the bargaining. "If this is about the dinner in Boston, I can explain. Please just talk to me before you assume anything." But I wasn't assuming anymore. I knew. By the end of the week, she started apologizing. "Jake, I'm sorry, okay? I know I've been distant. I know things have been off. But this isn't the way to fix it. Just come home. We can talk. We need to talk." Each message built on the last, like she was trying to construct a bridge out of desperation and delay. But the truth was, she didn't miss me. She missed the version of her life where I stayed quiet, where I stayed in place. And that version of me didn't exist anymore. My new apartment was small, clean, unfurnished except for a couch, a mattress, and a kitchen table I'd assembled wrong on the first try. It smelled like paint and possibility. No old photographs. No passive-aggressive sticky notes on the fridge. No expectations hanging in the air like fog. I started waking up early again. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I'd forgotten what that felt like. To wake up without dread. To sip coffee in the morning sun and not brace for tension. I'd forgotten how quiet could feel like comfort. My job was remote for the first 2 months. New team. New pace. Nothing fancy. But it was mine. I told them I'd moved for personal clarity. No one asked questions. The first Friday night alone was strange. I made pasta and watched a documentary with subtitles. That sounds small, but it felt rebellious. Rachel used to hate subtitles. She said they gave her headaches. It's funny the things you compromise on without realizing. The next day, I went to the farmer's market. I wandered around aimlessly at first, unsure what to buy. I ended up leaving with nothing but a loaf of bread, a local IPA, and a second-hand copy of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance from a street vendor. I read it that afternoon on the fire escape, and for a moment, I felt something close to peace. Meanwhile, Rachel's messages kept coming. I don't understand how you can just leave like this. Do I not deserve a conversation? A goodbye? Was I really that terrible to you? Yes and no. It's not that she was evil. She wasn't cruel in the textbook sense. She didn't scream, didn't hit, didn't cheat on me and brag about it. But cruelty isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just consistent neglect. The kind that wears down your soul like water wearing down stone. The kind of disregard that makes you question your worth, not all at once, but in slow, invisible increments. That was Rachel. Not a villain. Just someone who stopped seeing me a long time ago. I wasn't leaving her as punishment. I was leaving her because I'd already been erased. And if she was going to start over, then so was I. 2 weeks in, the calls stopped. 3 weeks in, a message arrived from an unknown number. I knew it was her. You blocked me? I hadn't. Not really. But I'd set everything to silent. I didn't want her voice pinging inside my peace anymore. The next message broke pattern. If you want the house, take it. I don't care. That one sat in my chest for a while. It wasn't the offer, it was the tone. Detached. Bitter. Like she wanted me to know she was hurt but wasn't going to show it directly. It was a move I recognized. I'd seen her use it in work emails before. By week 4, she sent one last message. I get it now. I didn't see you. I didn't try. And I'm sorry. I just hope someday you'll forgive me, even if we never talk again. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't feel triumph, or relief, or anger. I just felt done. I closed my phone, set it on the kitchen counter, and went outside. The air was cool that night, and the streets were buzzing with unfamiliar life. I walked aimlessly, letting the lights and movement wash over me. At one point, I found myself standing outside a bookstore cafe, warm yellow light spilling onto the sidewalk. Inside, a girl was laughing with a barista, her head thrown back like she didn't care who was watching. The kind of laugh that comes from deep in your gut. The kind I hadn't heard in years. I didn't go in, but I smiled, because for the first time in months, maybe years, I remembered what hope felt like. Not hope that Rachel would change. Not hope that she'd come back. But hope that somewhere down the line, I'd build a life so far removed from the one I left behind that I wouldn't even recognize the man who once stayed silent in the face of being forgotten. I went home that night and made a list. It wasn't long. Learn to cook something that takes longer than 30 minutes. Find a local gym or maybe a boxing class. Say yes to things, even if they scare you. Trust your gut. It knew long before your brain caught up. Don't confuse silence for peace. Don't confuse forgiveness with permission. Don't disappear again. Not from yourself. It was a stupid list. But it was a start. Every time I missed her, which still happened more often than I liked, I'd read the last 2 items out loud. They grounded me, reminded me that I wasn't running away from something anymore. I was walking towards something, even if I didn't know what it was yet. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. By the second month, the silence stopped feeling like space and started feeling like freedom. It's strange how quickly you can get used to being untethered. In the beginning, I'd still glance at my phone every few minutes, expecting another text, another voicemail, another attempt at pulling me back into the orbit of a life I no longer wanted. Now the phone sat on the kitchen counter, face up, unread notifications gathering like dust. Some nights I'd swipe through them without even opening. Others I didn't look at all. Rachel's outreach became less frequent but heavier. Her first few weeks of messages were frantic, desperate, full of half-formed apologies and offers to work on things. Then they turned pointed. You can't just leave without talking to me. That's not fair. You're being childish. At least let me know you're alive. Then came the accusations. I bet you're with someone else. You're trying to punish me. You were never strong enough to talk to me like an adult. I read them all quietly, not out of spite, not to keep score, just to understand. The tone told me everything I needed to know about where she was emotionally. First denial, then bargaining, then anger, and finally resignation. By the 8th week, she'd stopped writing paragraphs. Now it was just single sentences, every few days like echoes from a tunnel. I miss you. Please. I don't know what to do without you. I didn't reply, not because I hated her, because there was nothing left to say. We had both crossed our own point of no return. We just took different routes to get there. Meanwhile, my own life was slowly knitting itself into something new. The apartment was no longer just a collection of boxes. I bought a second-hand couch. Hung a few framed photos I'd taken years ago on road trips. Sunsets over highways, a faded motel sign, a sh*T of Lake Michigan from a pier. They weren't glamorous, but they were mine. I started cooking properly again. Not just pasta from a box. Actual meals. Grilled salmon with lemon. Roasted vegetables. Soups that took hours to simmer. At first I made too much, still thinking unconsciously of cooking for two. Now I portioned differently. Ate at my own pace. Cleaned the kitchen while listening to old records I hadn't played since college. One Saturday, I signed up for a community boxing class. It wasn't about fighting. It was about movement, about feeling my own body again. The first few sessions were brutal. My muscles ached. My lungs burned. But each time I wrapped my hands and stepped into the gym's echoing space, I felt something shifting. Anger burning off, replaced by focus. On Sundays I'd walk to a small cafe around the corner. The barista, a guy with an undercut and tattoos of birds on his forearms, started remembering my order. Black coffee and a sesame bagel. We'd chat sometimes. Not about anything big. Music. The weather. He'd recommend a new blend and I'd pretend to know what tasting notes meant. Felt normal. Good. I even started reconnecting with old friends. People I'd slowly drifted away from because Rachel's schedule, Rachel's trips, Rachel's moods had always come first. One evening I called Mike, my college roommate. We talked for an hour about nothing and everything. He invited me to visit him in Minneapolis. I said yes. In small ways, I was remembering who I'd been before all of this. But the ghost of Rachel was still there. Less like a wound now, more like a scar that itched sometimes. Especially at night. I catch myself wondering what she was doing. Whether Colin was still in the picture. Whether she was happy. The thoughts came less often, but when they did, they hit hard. Not because I wanted her back, but because it was strange to watch someone you'd built a life with become an outline in your mind. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived. Not an email. Not a text. An actual handwritten envelope with my name scrawled across the front in her neat handwriting. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Jake, I don't know where you are. I don't know if you'll even read this, but I needed to write. I've replayed everything over and over, and I can't believe how blind I was. You gave me so much and I gave you so little. I thought I was searching for something more, but all I did was destroy the one person who was actually there for me. If you hate me, I understand. I just hope you're safe. And I hope someday you find someone who sees you. Someone better than me. R. I held it for a long time. My hands didn't shake. My eyes didn't water. I just read it. Twice. It wasn't an apology designed to get me back. It wasn't bargaining. It was acknowledgement. And for that, I felt something close to gratitude. Not enough to reply, but enough to fold it neatly and tuck it into a drawer instead of the trash. That night, I sat on my balcony, the city humming below, and realized something. I didn't miss Rachel anymore. Not the way I thought I did. What I missed was the version of myself who believed in us. The man who thought loyalty alone was enough to keep a marriage alive. He was gone. In his place was someone quieter, but steadier. Someone who understood that leaving wasn't weakness. It was choosing not to drown in someone else's undertow. The next morning I went running for the first time in years. My lungs burned in the cool air, but each step felt like punctuation. This is mine, this is mine, this is mine. When I got home, I showered, brewed coffee, and opened my notebook. I added 2 new items to the list. Don't apologize for leaving. Build a life worth staying in. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about making sure that, years from now, if someone asked me about Rachel, I wouldn't think of betrayal first. I think of how that ending forced me to start. Later that week, I accepted Mike's invitation and booked a train ticket to Minneapolis. Felt impulsive, but the good kind. The kind where you're no longer running from something, but towards something undefined. I left Rachel's letter on the counter before I went, next to my keys. When I returned that night, it was still there. Unopened again. Just paper. Just ink. For the first time in a long time, my apartment felt warm. Not because of anything in it, but because of what it didn't hold anymore. No lies. No waiting. No erasure. Just me. And for now, that was enough. Rachel reached out once more. A long message, full of reflection, saying Colin was gone and so was the job. She asked if we could meet, just to talk. I read it twice, then deleted it. I didn't hate her. I just didn't need answers anymore. Her story was behind me. Mine was finally unfolding page by page on my own terms. Spring came fast. New city, new rhythm. I joined a photography group, started writing again. One Sunday, I laughed, really laughed, with someone new over coffee. Not love yet, but something honest. I realized then, healing isn't about forgetting. It's about living fully in what comes next. And I was finally doing that.